Hello. Thank you for joining us today for another episode of the A Brighter Day podcast. My name is Beverly Knox Davis, and I will be your host. Today, we have an amazing guest with us that has been a part of just community and so much more. We see him, but then we don't on so many things that are going on all over Charlotte. So today, we have none other than Mr. Darrell Gregory. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us about Darrell Gregory. Share about your family, your background, your aspirations, goals, things that we normally wouldn't see on social media or just, seeing you here or there.
I'm a twin.
That blows my mind. Those of us that know him times two. Oh my God.
At least times two. He's in his personality is even stronger than mine.
I can't. But that just means it's this double of greatness on so many levels. So
yeah, we actually got that. I'm more. I actually thought I was more like my father, and he was more like my mother. My mother is kind of like a militant. She's quiet, but she moves. My father is kind of like he wants to be the peacemaker. And there's a time and place for that, But I tend to gravitate more toward her as I get older in terms of trying to right wrongs and speak up and be the voice for those who are underserved, who don't have a voice and often overlooked and maligned by some of the society norms. But we're a family of six. It's 4 kids. Me and my brother, we're the oldest. I have a younger sister and a younger brother.
Okay.
I came from a strong family. My father was a strong black man.
I can believe that.
He taught us how to be men first and put that above everything else. Because if you do that, everything else will fall in line. He wasn't perfect, neither am I, anybody else. We all find faults, but at the end of the day, accountability was really big with him.
That's good.
So, I thank him for that. He's still with us. My mom, they're up in age, but they're still kicking. They're refusing to stay still.
All right. They're here in Charlotte.
They live here in Charlotte.
Okay, that's good.
She's doing her best to spend his retirement money every time they want to go somewhere.
Go, Mom.
She's going. Yeah, there've been times she said, "I'm gonna leave. This is the trip. Now, if you want to go, you better come." So he packs a bag. But
I love it.
They're enjoying their retirement.
Okay.
Thank God.
And how long have they been together?
My father is 83, so they got married at 21, 22. So they've been together at least 60 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
No breakup, none of that.
That's awesome.
They held it down.
They can set the example for a lot of what's happening in this day and age.
Yeah, because they had personalities like everybody else, but they know how to work through it. And as I said, my father showed us how to be men, so there are certain transgressions that he did not embark on, so to jeopardize that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So he could teach the class that needs to be taught a lot.
Yeah, that part.
This society.
That part.
Awesome.
As far as some of the other things I'm involved in, I have my own nonprofit, Youth-Based Strategies of Mecklenburg County. And I have not been as active with that as I like. I still have it, and I utilize it in certain areas here in town. I kind of got away from my main mission with that, and I need to do better. And that's something that we'll probably talk about going forward in this conversation. I have worked with Department of Public Safety on a number of occasions. I do work with DSS currently. I've worked with the U.S. Army. I was served, I think it was a 7-year term on the Community Advisory Board, where we advised them on certain outreach. And we also was doing events together. There were multiple events. And Colonel Hunt, I love that dude. If I see him today, I owe him a lunch. He really turned the tide with the Army in terms of being more sensitive to the neighborhoods that they all were actually recruiting from.
Okay.
And
you do a lot with the Marines
I
now.
do now. Yeah,
How
It
that
was
happened?
it was really funny. We were meeting up in Raleigh, like once a month with the Army, and I don't know who told who, but up there I met I can't think of his name now. It was a lieutenant colonel, and he asked. They have a little rivalry, all the branches move differently. And he said, if you want to make some moves and make them faster, the Marine Corps is where to go. But their way of doing things is a little bit different.
Yes.
So, and I was still working with the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Activities League at the time. So I was dealing with another nonprofit doing joint work, and her as Gina with God's Creation. She was talking to me about how to work with Toys-For-Tots, because at the time that the chapter here was very small.
Yes.
It wasn't, and it's just due to logistics. It wasn't giving them a lot of attention. The Toys-For-Tots. I say it to the colonels that rotate in and out. We know we're the red-headed stepchild of the Corps. And I know that, so I embrace it. But there's ways that we can navigate, even though there are obstacles in place. So I actually went there one year. Gunny Bartell was over it, and we were operating out of front of a shoe store that was probably the size of your hub.
Wow.
And it was a mess. So I got clearance to do some volunteer work, doing a day with them and organize them. And they asked me to come back the next year to help them. And I actually wrote a logistic plan for all the chapters on how to intake the toys, and how to inventory, how to track, how to keep the warehouse, and how to distribute that they're implementing in a lot of chapters nationwide. So that's how I got started. That was 12 years ago.
That's amazing. I know you do a lot for several organizations all over Charlotte, and I'm sure beyond, just to ensure that time of year is very special for our young people, and it's extremely appreciated. I know that was when we really got started. I had heard of you and knew that you were participating with the Boys to Men Foundation. So tell us a little bit about that, because my son went through the Boys to Men Foundation, and I tell you, when he got out of line, now this is one of them that would have that hardcore conversation and talk about scared straight. My boy got back on track. So I love him for that. And of course, all of the leadership with the Boys to Men Foundation. But I always thought you were a good add to that organization. And to see how my son turned out, I mean, I'm almost...
That's a testament in itself.
There you go. Those outcomes that we're always talking about with our work that we do. But Jaden was, just very angry, had a lot of issues with just being able to channel his anger and to stay in school and get educated. And these gentlemen were here, Mr. Gregory included, to have really great conversations with him and guidance and different programs, activities. So I'm extremely thankful for that. And of course, Jaden graduated from North Carolina Central University in 2024 with several honors and is doing extremely well. So I have that organization to thank tremendously, and for men like Mr. Gregory. So thank you immensely. Thank you.
I thank you for trusting your child with us.
Absolutely.
That's something that it's not an easy decision to make.
No.
For any adult, and I love that boy, to see the change, and he has just grasped manhood,
Yes.
By the horns, and he far exceeded my expectations. I can't say enough about him. Those the success stories are what keep you going, because there's so much going on with these kids, and they're faced with a lot of trauma. Known trauma and unknown trauma, and they're not equipped to handle it because of the adults that are not equipped to handle it.
That's very true.
So we can't expect our kids to know how to deal with it. Suck it up and get right. That doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
So
Doesn't work for adults.
No, it doesn't work for adults either. So I'm just glad that he was able to take, what little we were able to provide and make it work for him.
Absolutely. And of course, that story and all that I saw with the Boys and Men Foundation actually was extremely helpful with A Brighter Day, as well as starting our Break Every Chain program, where we're working with the second graders before they are assessed in third grade for the school to prison pipeline. But, working with them on how to channel that anger and how to repurpose, your feelings and get back on track, stay in school. So it all tied together in community and being able to, just see what was being done and then implement it in a way to help them more from the beginning of the story, which is where I always like to start. So thank you for all of your work there. So are you still doing work with them?
I work with him on occasion, especially with this something that he needs help with. It's while you were telling me, I was thinking about how far back I go back with Chris Fowler. We've had some good times and some hard times. We used to meet I think it was every third Sunday at his house to have a board meeting and talk and strategize. And I actually wrote the first grant that we got. Okay. We were so happy. It was only $1,000, and he called me up and told me the check was in the mailbox. We took pictures, and we couldn't tell us anything then, but we were off to the races. And nothing like that first check, and that really gave us. I mean, there were times when we were doing stuff out of pocket. It was just hard times, and then trying to get parents to loan us their children to help them, and just looking at where we were at. Wow, I mean, it's probably 15 years, something like that. It's been a long time. But Chris is he's still rocking and rolling. He knows to call me if he needs some help, and he does. And I'll call him, if I got something that I think he could use, to help him, But he's really making moves. I'm expecting big things for him.
Absolutely, and I'm super proud. I've told him before, I was like, you're Jaden's adopted dad, so just go ahead and accept the role. Even had a conversation with his wife. I was like, look, hey, I just need you to know, I just need to borrow him on occasion when Jaden is all out of line. But we just became one big family, and I'm just extremely grateful for all of the men. I know Mr. Patterson, Javon Patterson comes here. He helps out with the food pantry and has done some work in the storage building as well. And he'll be back, I believe, this weekend as well.
He's a good dude.
Very good. So many that came out of the Boys and Men Foundation, which I know that's a part of your resume as well. So I know you're part of the NAACP. First VP still?
I was.
You was.
I was.
You were. Okay.
I was. I started out as became a member, met Corinne, and it was kind of off to the races at that point. The president. I started out as a community events chair, and then moved over to. She asked me if I would consider running for first vice, and I did, and I got it. It's kind of like doing, helping her, appearing when she couldn't, giving her counsel. Yes. That's a position that I took very seriously because, you're the face of the NAACP.
Absolutely.
So, that's something I didn't take lightly. Then we had some transition on the board. So she asked me if I would consider being the treasurer. I I don't enjoy it, but I did it, and then I rolled off.
Those are the good ones that were willing to roll up their sleeves and just get it done.
Yeah, that was a job, but I've done it before, so I handle that. Now I'm kind of like her at large, quote unquote. If there's issues that, she wants help. I have no problem supporting her because I trust her. She's a pistol. Yes. She's gonna say something and she notices something wrong, and I can be that lightning rod for her.
Yes, indeed.
Since I don't hold a position, I can go ahead and do and say what needs to be said.
So tell us more about, why you go so hard for doing what is right. And I know we heard the foundation was planted by your parents. But foundations can be planted, and then people still not.
Not act on it. Yeah.
So what made you just stay true to it? Because I know if I need to know the skinny and what's real and what's actually going on, this is the person I will call, because he's just going to give it to me straight, no chaser. So I want to know where does all that come from, and your drive to just continue to go hard for so many communities.
I was thinking about that when I was driving over here. I'm gonna be honest with you. When my son was 6 or 7, I was dropping him off at school, and he went to First Ward. And I would see kids getting off the bus in dirty uniforms, dirty shirts, face crusted, hasn't been washed, and I was very close to the principal, because I was there 3 or 4 days out the week eating lunch with my son Taylor. They were here at the time. I worked for Coca-Cola, and I had maybe 200 keys on my belt, for the equipment, and they would hear me jingling down the hallway, and that got to the point where they wouldn't even let me sign it. They just said, "Go ahead," But I would see kids, getting off the bus in school, and principal, and I call. I said, "Why are parents letting them kids come to school like that?" And so after the second or third comment, he said, "Well, you got to think about it. Their home environment. They're probably just doing good just to be in school, because there's no structure, there's no support, there's no family unit there. Some of them are sleeping on the floor because the frequency of gunshots, keep from being injured. They're living with family. They're living in somebody else's house. That maybe McKinney-Vento qualified." So at that point, because I was there so much, he asked me to mentor a group of kids. And I started doing that, which I had to navigate that carefully, because my son was getting jealous, because he had gotten so used to me coming there. I had to tell him.
I like to share.
Yeah, he did not. And I only have one child. He's a daddy's boy. He's 31 years old now, but he's still there. He didn't want to split me. I had to divide my time. So I mentored them, and that's where it started. I got recruited for several other positions, and it's off to the races. Because you see so much. Yeah. Our kids are at war with themselves. They're at war with their family, their peers, the school, society. They're angry because they may see something that they desire their parents cannot provide. So some of them internalize that. Some of them go out and get it illegally. And then you look at the way society is structured now. It's not structured for them to succeed. Right. It's structured for them to fail. And they want that because they can make money on our kids failing, which means incarceration.
Absolutely. They're going back to that school to prison pipeline. Exactly. And the reason we get them in the second grade before they start.
So those test scores, get them test scores up.
In the third grade onwards. So yes, it all ties together. So
does.
I've often had conversations with you, whether it was something dealing with Jaden, or how do I do this, or, what advice. I've said it 1,000 times. Parents, we're getting it wrong. Even the ones that think that, they're so engaged and they're riding their kids, the ones that's on the other end of the spectrum. So I've asked you before, what should I do? I was always the one seeking the right answers for how to raise my son. And for moms, listen up on this part, because we don't know how to raise our young, especially African-American sons. We just don't. We can't give them everything. That male role model is so very important. So what advice would you give to parents that may be struggling, with their young person, just to, have that breakthrough, like that moment? I can almost pinpoint it with Jaden when he just said, I'm done with all of this. But I know it was everything that was being planted in him. Give us some advice.
Well, for one, parents, we say we listen, but a lot of times we listen to respond instead of listening to receive that information to allow that insight to take place. We always, as parents, I'm guilty of this a lot, and even with my secular job, we forget to put ourselves in their place. We expect our children to respond to issues, trauma, situations as we would as an adult, and they're not. They're children. They're not equipped to have that. We have to give that tool set to them, and when we lack, we have to be willing to seek resources outside of the home to help provide that. I don't have a daughter. I have niece. I have two grandnieces from my brother. I don't know what it's like to raise a daughter. Don't have any experience. So when I embarked on this journey of advocacy, I will help anybody's child. My specialty is men because that's all I know.
Right.
I know how to get through a young man that's having these issues, have that grown man conversation with him. I don't know what it's like to talk to a female like that. And it probably wouldn't resonate with her the way I would come at a male, So parents as a whole, we don't have, and then too, we don't have all the answers. We think we do because of our experiences, but that's our experiences.
That's right.
That's not our child's. And even if they are similar, the viewpoint or perspective may be different.
That's right.
So we have to learn how to listen. And our children will tell us. If you listen hard enough, they're going to tell you what's wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you may not have the answer or know how to fix it, but they're going to tell you.
Absolutely.
And that's the part where I think we fail, myself included. We don't listen. We think we know the answers before they ask the question, and a lot of times we don't.
We don't. I know we had a youth explosion a couple of years ago, and something that I want to definitely pick back up. But my main focus was parents, we will shut up and we will listen. So we put the young people on the stage and allowed them to speak and to tell the parents, and the parents were the audience. And that was the most impactful event I have ever attended. Just to see, and then the tears, we needed more boxes of tissue than anything else. They felt like they were in a safe place to express and that their parents were actually going to listen. So I think that's very good advice. And I think as we go forward, we can all take a page out of your book and just being very straightforward and honest about, what's going on. And then to do 1,000%. If you're going to do something, put your whole self in it. And that's all I've ever seen you do. So we thank you so much for all of the things that you do in the background that nobody sees. He's a hardworking man. And I just appreciate people like you that give of yourself, whether you're in the spotlight or not. That's one thing that is troubling in what we see and do with community.
I told you this so many times. I told everybody, I'm just a cog in the machine. I am nobody special. If I was to disappear tomorrow, there would be someone in place to handle what used to be my responsibility. I don't, I'm not one for, flashing, the stuff I do. I just show up and do what needs to be done.
Right. And he keeps order, y'all. Definitely keeps order.
That I do.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a real treat. I was very happy when you said yes. So, again, we've had here Mr. Darrell Gregory, a true pillar in our community and in society overall. So thank you all so much for joining us for this episode of the A Brighter Day podcast. Please, please, please check us out on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, and all social media platforms. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.